In this video, we will show you how to replace your upper transmission mount on this Honda Accord. This is located on top of your transmission underneath your air filter housing. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we want to do is make our way up along the top of the air filter housing. That's where you're going to find your mass airflow sensor. Disconnect your mass airflow sensor by squeezing on the locking tab located along the top of it. We'll give it a quick check for corrosion. The next thing we want to do is follow this wiring harness down to its connection point right along the top of that box. We'll pop that out of place and set the wiring aside. Just have to work this around a little bit. That where we can find it. Loosen the clamp that holds the air inlet tube to the air filter housing. For this, we'll be using a 5.5mm socket. Disconnect that air inlet from the air filter housing. Now we can dismount the air filter housing from the area. Once you remove the mounting bolts, you're going to start lifting it up. There is still a wiring harness that's attached to the bottom of it, so we want to pay attention to that. Let's get that first one. 10mm straight down here. Can use some long nose pliers to take hold of that bolt. The next one's located up by the fender. We'll leave that bolt in place in the rubber grommet, and now we can take hold of this, give it a wiggle, and start lifting it up and out of here. Just going to try to slide this air inlet tube out of the way. We can see where the wiring's located. You could use a trim tool or a small prying device for this. We'll just pry the wiring off of that box. Now to gain access to be able to pull this up a little bit further and remove it from the engine compartment, we're going to loosen this box as well. You'll find that you have two 10mm headed bolts, one on the inboard side here and one over by the fender. Take hold of that box, you can wiggle it around a little bit. At this point, we can take that air filter housing, lift it up and out of here. Let's give that a quick inspection. We can set this aside. Let's apply some support underneath the transmission. It's a good idea to use a small chunk of wood in between your jack. There we are. Back inside this area, we're going to remove this upper plate. To remove the plate, use a 14mm. There's that bolt. Let's get the other two. Take hold of the bracket, remove it from the area, give it a close inspection, make sure it's not rotted or damaged. Set it aside. Let's remove the ground strap from this bracket. Use a 10mm. There's that little bolt. Take hold of the ground strap. Make sure it's still in good condition. We'll set that aside. Now we'll remove these two 17mm bolts. Once we've done that, we can take hold of this bracket and slide it out of place. At this point, we have a clear view of our upper transmission mount. Now we can start removing our three 14mm headed mounting bolts. You'll have one located up along the top and the other two are just underneath this. We'll start with the one that's easiest to get to up along the top. Fully remove it, give it a close inspection, and start it back in there just a couple threads. There's that bolt. Start it in there a couple threads. Now the next two mounting bolts are going to be located directly underneath this mount. Let's get this center one now. There's that bolt. Let's try to get our final bolt towards the front. That bolt out of there. There's that one. Take hold of that mount. Remove our final bolt. Remove the mount. There it is, friend. All right, let's get ready to install our brand new upper transmission mount. Slide this down here and get it in position. Once you have it down there, we'll continue on with one of our long bolts. Start that in. Now, as we continue on to the other two, the center one will be the shorter of the three bolts. We'll bottom each of these bolts out and then torque them to 33 foot-pounds. Let's get that last one. Now we can install this bracket. We'll slide this into place directly underneath that upper transmission mount. Before we put in any mounting bolts, let's also put this upper bracket that goes on top of the transmission mount. Just rest that right over the top. Now we'll start in the center bolt. Now you're going to want to leave that nice and loose so you can lift up on this bracket and slide it out of the way. Continue on with your two 17mm headed bolts that hold the bracket to the top of the transmission. The torque for these two bolts is 40 foot-pounds. Swing that bracket into place. We'll start in both of these bolts, snug them up, and torque them to 33 foot-pounds. Snug the center bolt and torque that to 40 foot-pounds. Reattach your ground strap. We'll get that in place, start in the 10mm headed bolt, snug it up, and torque that to 9 foot-pounds. Confirm it's perfectly secured to the bracket. Let's continue on to reinstalling our air filter housing. When doing so, we need to pay attention to a couple things. We have the air inlet tube right up along here. Down inside this forward area, there is another tube that we will have to slide the air filter housing over. Let's start putting this into place. When installing this inlet hose, you want to make sure you have it completely bottomed out. If it's hanging off a little bit, you could get dirty air inside this area. Tighten your clamp. Confirm that's secured. This lined up. You want to make sure you start in each one of these two mounting bolts before you tighten either of them. Use a magnet on this one. Just get it in place. Confirm your air filter housing secured to the body properly. Let's get this in place. Start in both of your 10mm headed mounting bolts, and then snug them up. Let's move along to the mass airflow sensor. Put in the mounting point directly into that air filter housing. That should slide in. Listen for a click. Make sure it is secured. Press in the connector. Listen for a click from that. Give it a little tug just to make sure it's secured in place. Okay, friend, we fully installed our transmission mount. At this point, slide the jack out from underneath the vehicle. Start it up and let it run. Make sure you don't hear any funny noises from under the hood. Close the hood and then take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.